So first off, before we start this video, I just want to give a big thank you to my patron, Trusty Nail Ding, for this suggestion. Seriously, it helps out quite immensely being a patron, and with that, let's get right into this. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about Trinity, as I feel as though, first off, it was Patreon requested, but as well, I feel as though it's an amazing format, and I felt, well, who better to describe Trinity as a format than, well, treetopduelist. So I invited him on to today's video. I guess let's just get right into this. So why should we play Trinity in 2019? And I think the best place to start with that discussion is talking about the rules. So how do we actually play Trinity
great question.
format?
That's the perfect place to start. So just like the TCG and speed duels, as both still Yu-Gi-Oh, they're just different ways of playing it. Trinity is yet another different way to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh. The thing that makes Trinity really special to me and to a lot of other people is that it's got a very strong format philosophy, which aims to make games as enjoyable as possible. It's great if your game is really diverse, but if games themselves aren't fun, or if there are frustrating elements about it, because of this, the Trinity ban list includes cards such as Macrocosmos or Imperial Order, you know, the floodgate cards. Other things such as unkillable boss monsters, instant win conditions, or like first turn kill FTK decks, they're also outlawed from the format. The main idea of Trinity is to have games themselves be really fun and interactive and enjoyable, and we accomplish this by adding some extra rules to the format, which really help it have a more enjoyable play experience, and it also adds an interesting spin to deck building.
Alright, so with that, what rules could we expect? So for example, I know there's obviously the summon limit rule, where you can only summon about 3 times per turn.
Yeah, quite right. So as you mentioned, the first rule change is called the summon limit, and it states that neither player can summon effect monsters more than 3 times each turn. The main purpose of this rule change is to make games much more like 5D's era Yu-Gi-Oh, make games more interactive. Because of the summon limit, you'll find that first turn, like massive 5 negate boards, FTK decks, 20-minute long non-interactive combos, they're all non-viable. They do not exist in Trinity because of the summon limit. Games are much more interactive and engaging with the opponent. A typical turn is going to be more like, I'll normal summon a monster, I'll special summon a monster, I'll make an extra deck monster, I'll set some back row, your turn. It's really back and forth and interactive, and that's the gameplay that quite a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players like to see. If you listen closely, you'll notice that the summon limit only affects effect monsters. This means that if you summon a normal monster or a non-effect monster like Gaia Saber, it won't count towards the summon limit. This actually gives you like an incentive to play normal monsters, which a fair few decks actually do.
And I think it's really cool too that just creatively there's a lot of different ways to approach this idea. So for example, you can have a card like Tour Guide fetch a normal monster, and that doesn't count towards your summon limit. It only means you've summoned 1 time. You can also use Phantom Sky Blaster in order to summon a token, which in case you've only used 1 summon. And so I think it's really cool how you can be creative with this rule and see how far it takes you, but as well, the idea of having this cap also means that we can't have like too many like crazy strategies. It's a much more controlling format, like back in the day, like as you described, 5D's-esque format.
Yeah, definitely. The tour guide thing is actually quite relevant at the moment.
Oh, it is.
In Burning Abyss, if you go Tour Guide, Skarm, Dante, that's 3 summons, that's your full turn, which isn't a bad board. But if you want to make Beatrice, you can go Tour Guide, Dark King of the Abyss, which is a normal monster, and then you can make Dante, and then you can make your Beatrice, since the Dark King doesn't count towards the summon limit.
Yeah, because of the summon limit ruling, and I think that's just really cool generally, just the idea that this is a much slower format. Compared to obviously Yu-Gi-Oh as of right now, where we have like so many fast decks. Like for example, the Thunder Dragon, Guard Dragon, Danger deck won't be a thing in Trinity because of that summon limit ruling.
Well actually, Thunder Dragons, Dangers, and Dragon Rulers, which is essentially Guard Dragons, the Dragon Rulers are legal in Trinity. They're all independent decks and they do exist in Trinity. In fact, pretty much all TCG decks exist in some form in Trinity, but they just play very differently. Both Thunder Dragon fusion monsters, the new fusions, are banned in Trinity, but the deck is still pretty good. It's kind of like a chaos sort of deck. You do actually play the vanilla fusion, Dragon Rulers aren't that good, which might surprise some people, but the deck still definitely exists. You can turn one Dracosack and then keep making level 8 synchros from there. Dangers are really good as like a discard resource space engine, but all of these decks are much more interactive. Instead of sort of making a big board first turn and resolving Sayuja as much as you possibly can, you're using your cards and resources to counter what your opponent's doing and then sort of set up some more plays for later, get in a bit of damage when you can. There's much less emphasis on sort of winning as soon as possible, and much more emphasis on sort of back and forth gameplay.
Is there any other specific key ruling you would like to point out for Trinity format?
Yeah, well, there is one other rule change called the card limit, and this states that usually neither player can have more than one copy of any card in their deck. This means that Trinity decks are pretty much just one-offs. If you know what Highlander format is, it's more or less that. But generally in Highlander formats, especially the sort of TCG 60-card Highlander format, decks are really inconsistent. Trinity decks, not so much, because the minimum main deck size in Trinity is reduced from 40 to 30. So if you want to, you can play a 30-card deck. Now remember that this is 30 different individual cards, so deck building diversity isn't just destroyed. And there's actually an incentive to play more than 30 cards. In fact, 45 I think is the most optimal build, because for every extra 5 cards you put in your deck, that deck is allowed to include an extra copy of any unlimited card. For example, you could just play 30 card BA, nice. But if you wanted to, you could play 35 cards, and then that deck can include one second copy of Tour Guide from the Underworld, for example. There are also some cards which are generally kind of hindered by Highlander rules in general. If you think of like Destiny Hero Malicious or Balbaboon, to resolve these cards you need extra copies of themselves, and that means that they're unbound in Trinity. Unbound means that you can play 3 copies of it for free. So if you're playing a 30 card deck, you can put in 3 Balbaboon in your deck, done and dusted. A lot of people when they first see the card limit rule think that Trinity is going to be quite inconsistent, but this really isn't true at all. Firstly, because it's a slower format, you can afford to use your life points as a resource, so you can take some damage to build up some time to draw more cards. But the main point here is that if you have a larger deck size, you're allowed more copies of cards. So if you play a 40 card deck, you can play 3 Tour Guide, and on top of that there are loads of cards which search Tour Guide. You have Skarm which searches it, you have Mathematician and Armageddon Knight to mill your Skarm, you have Sangan which is a really critical card, Graph searches your Skarm. There's so many things and engines which all search each other that decks really don't ever feel inconsistent. The main purpose of the card limit is to move games away from being really linear. TCG decks often focus on just doing one thing and doing that one thing really well. Trinity decks are much more sort of, I look at my hand, I look at my opponent's board, every game's completely different, and you have to work out, like, solve this puzzle of how to beat your opponent. The card limit means that all the games are really different, unique, dynamic. It's really interesting gameplay.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting sort of idea that goes into it where you can increase your deck size, but then you have to change the consistency of seeing all your other cards. So it's very questionable whether you want to, for example, make this card a 3 of, but then decrease the potential of seeing every other card in your deck. And as well with that, you can have some interesting choices on the ban list. So I know, for example, the ban list is obviously going to be different because this type of deck building idea that you have to employ. So with that, what type of things go into the ban list that you have to consider?
Yeah, that's a great... In Trinity, it doesn't make much sense to have a card as limited or semi-limited, since you're only really playing one copy of everything anyway. Instead, we have semi-forbidden and co-forbidden. Normally, you can't play any semi or co-forbidden cards in your deck at all, because they're, like, forbidden. But for every extra 5 cards in your deck, like I said before, you can choose to put an extra copy of an unlimited card into your deck. Or you can choose to play a semi-forbidden card or 2 different co-forbidden cards. So for example, a 35 card deck can have a second copy of Tour Guide from the Underworld. We've already gone through that. Or instead, you can choose to play a semi-forbidden card, for example, Change of Heart, or 2 different co-forbidden cards from your choice on the Trinity ban list. This means that a lot of cards in the TCG which have to be banned, otherwise they'd just be generic staples, can be semi or co-forbidden in Trinity, since not everyone is forced to run them. If you want to play your Change of Heart, you can, but you have to put an extra 5 cards into your deck. And that's a really interesting deck building decision that you have to make when building a deck. Are you going to go for absolute consistency, or are you going to sort of up your power a little bit, but then decrease the consistency of all the other cards in your deck?
Yeah, it's really cool just in general. And I know, for example, Pot of Greed, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhere on the ban list. Yeah, and nobody plays it because you have to add 5 cards to your deck for Pot of Greed when that could be something else.
Well, graceful charity is semi-forbidden, and that's got its fair few decks that it slots into. Discarding a Danger and a Shadow can be pretty fun.
One last thing I want to ask before we end this: what could you expect in this current format of Trinity?
Well, actually, we've just had a new ban list where we don't ever really get like tier 0 formats. But the best decks have been hit, and so the metagame's cracked wide open. I'm pretty sure like everything's playable right now. Some examples of decks I've seen people testing are Heroes, Shadow, Cyber, ABC, that's all one deck. Necros is really good, we just got the Incantations from Sast. Madolche is really strong. Dinosaur, of all things, playing Ultimate Tyranno, won the last tournament, like a serious 27-person tournament. Pretty much anything you can think of really. Dragon Ruler's illegal. As we've discussed quite a bit, Burning Abyss is as prevalent in Trinity as it has been in the TCG formats. I think Thunder Dragon can be really strong, I think. There are a lot of good stuff decks, which are just sort of like, it's kind of like Goat Control, you just get all the good cards that exist and cram them together and somehow it wins. I've seen a lot of people playing Red Eyes. Blue Eyes was incredibly strong last format. Orcust and Phantom Knight mixed together, it was quite innovative and really difficult to play. Cyber Herald is good. Infernoid just got Decatron taken off of the ban list, so I reckon that's pretty good now.
So if you guys ever want to play a very creative format, you can be very creative in this type of format because there are so many different ways of approaching it. I've played the format in the past and I know from experience it's a very fun and very creative format, and it rewards great deck building, and it's just overall such a blast. So if you guys ever want to go check out Trinity, I'll have all the information in the description along with the tutorial video or where to begin, etc. I'll have a link to the Discord, all of that stuff. TreetopDuelist or Mika, thank you so much for coming on with me for this video.
Oh, thank you. It was lovely to have me on here.
So by the way, if you guys want to join a Trinity format tournament this weekend, go down into the description, join the Discord, you'll find all the stuff there. It is this Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you guys want to participate in an upcoming Trinity format tournament, you should participate in that. Thank you, Mika, for coming on with me today in this video.
Thank you, and until BladeYGO next uploads, stay groovy. Oh, sorry, that's the
Anyways,
for Trinity videos.
Oh, gotcha. Anyways, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to support me further than just watching my YouTube videos, go down into the description and support me on Patreon. It helps out quite immensely. As well, if you guys want to talk to me further than just my YouTube comment section, go down into the description and join my Discord server. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I hope to see you soon.